Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who Shada 2003, which is the third BBCi Doctor Who website webcast featuring, and it's the second one to feature audio from Big Finsih Productions. Then they've released this extended edition CD. Again, I have not heard the CD version, just seen the webcast, and so we're reviewing it as that. And you can find the webcast as a extra on Shada. However, they could only put it onto as a version you can play on computer. I tried to do that, but it didn't work for some reason. It just didn't work on my computer. It's a PC. It could work on PC or Mac, but it didn't work. So I didn't know if I was able to watch it, and I actually watched Scream the Schalke first, and it was actually out of order for the first time in this reviews. But thankfully, I was able to watch it on the Blu-ray disc from the Shada Steelbook Blu-ray. So, if it doesn't work on this DVD and you don't have this Steelbook Blu-ray, you're pretty much stumped. If you're able to watch it, because I couldn't find it on YouTube anymore, and it wasn't working from the website. So yeah, you're pretty much stumped when it comes to watching the 2003 version if you can't get it on the original release. Original DVD, and you don't have the Steelbook. Okay, 2003 Shada webcast, or Return to Shada as it's known on the Steelbook Blu-ray. Okay, before we get started, this story actually differs a little bit from the Douglas Adams version, as Gary Russell's adapting the story, but there are some bits that I know this story quite well due to watching the animated version from 2017 quite a lot. And I know that some parts of this story are a little bit different. There's some scenes that are a little bit different. Some of the dialogue's a bit altered. There's also the prologue scene at the start that's definitely brand new. It's trying to connect the Eighth Doctor's era into Shada. So they're doing this story with the Eighth Doctor, which is good to give the Eighth Doctor more screen time, but not so good if you're trying to completely remake this. However, there are bits that, like I said, feel different to the original, so actually this kind of does work. So it actually does work with McGann doing it. I also have to say that I think it was Nicholas Pegg directing this one. His directing of the characters' expressions throughout the scenes, they're not quite as excitable or powerful as the ones in the original one. Even in the animated segments, there seems to be a direction that is showing off the characters. Characters are giving it all in the original and in the 2017 versions, but in this version, they seem to be a bit more tamed with their performances, and I kind of do miss some of those performances from the older ones. And I know this isn't going to be exactly the same, but I think there could have been a bit more emphasis on some of those performances. I love Paul McGann, but I don't think he's quite put it all in with this one. Same with Lana Ward, who is the only actor/actress to appear in the original, the webcast, and the 2017 versions. As John Leeson is K9 here, and probably does the animated K9 voices in the new one, as David Beardley was dead. And I kind of miss Beardley's voice in this one, which is strange because John Leeson is infinitely better, and I'm glad he did the voice here, but I don't know, I kind of miss Beardley's squeakier voice in some points. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just more used to him in Shada. But even Lana Ward's not putting her as much effort into this one as she did in the original, nor in the 2017 version when she sounds even older, but yet she's still putting a lot of effort into her voice work. And the new cast for these supporting characters, they all do really great, but again, there isn't so much emphasis in the performance as in the older cast, so I'm not sure what it was with the direction, but it just feels like they wanted to have it a bit more tamed. That being said, said cast is amazing. Paul McGann, like I said, he's amazing. And they also got, and we've got, there's the cast list in here. We've also got Sean Bickerstrath of Harry Potter fame. He was Oliver Wood. As Chris Parsons, he does a really good job. Got James Fox is playing Professor Chronotis. He does a really good job. He's got this really nice, warmly professor voice in him. Susanna Hardacre does Claire Keatley. I think she does a pretty close performance to the original actress. The character designs presumably match the actors a bit closer, if in the case of Parsons and Keeley, and also for Skagra, who I'll get to in a bit. But the Professor seems to be resembling his original counterpart a bit more. Melvin Hayes as Wilkin, he does a decent job as Wilkin. And Andrew Sachs as Skagra, he actually does a really good job. He's really good as Skagra. He does a pretty good job. There's also Nicholas Pegg as the think tank voice, which is just the announcer things. So yeah, he of course does great. Hannah Gordon as the ship, she does a pretty good job as well. And Stuart Crossman as the Constable. Well, for that character, he does good, but I really hate the Constable character. If there was one character from any version of Shada I don't like, it's the Constable, and I'll explain some reasons later. The animation. I also say before we move on, the animation this time round by Lee, who was it? I know James Goss does the animation. Was it Lee Binding? No, Lee Sullivan. Lee Sullivan's artwork. This time we got much more clear, much more crisp artwork. Now, I had seen this version before a few years back, and I wasn't really a fan of it because it was basically just pictures with a little bit of movement, as I later found out when having a quick look at the animated version of the version on the Steelbook Blu-ray. I had a quick look to see, oh, it is this version. And I did notice that they did have some actual movements, and you do have characters kind of moving around a little bit more, so it's not just a still artwork. So yeah, but I still wasn't really that fan of it. And then I see the other two webcasts that came before it, and then I see this one, and yeah, I take back some of my criticisms of this version of this story in the case of the animation and artwork department following the previous two, because at least this story actually tries to be a bit more of an animated film, animated webcast, because Death Comes to Time was basically just artwork pictures thrown together. That's what I basically thought about this one before a quick look at the version on the Blu-ray last year when I was checking. Oh wait, it is that version. So yeah, Real Time's artwork was a bit more crisp and a bit more. Real Time's artwork was a bit more cleaner and it was a bit more made sense. And there was even a few occasional movements in the facial department. However, it still was basically pretty pictures. There was even, like in the Underwater Menace reconstruction released by the BBC on the DVD, some of the audio doesn't completely match with some of the images, and some things that will happen in a few seconds' time appear on screen before in audio, or vice versa. And in some cases, the visuals were more focused on the Doctor's cat lapel rather than the Doctor or another character talking. However, with the artwork of Shada, it actually does focus on what we need to do, and it's not only is it cleaner, it's also more colourful and more crispier, and there is some really good animation as well in this bit. So I take back some of my criticisms from before this. So I actually take back some of my pre-rewatch criticisms about this story with the webcast animation. But let's just say I'm not really a fan of webcast. The webcast animation they use for these three. Scream the Schalke has the animation I do like. Even Dreamland, which I'm not really a fan of that 3D animation, but at least they're moving, so that's better. That's automatically better. But at least Shada's is a bit more of a moving picture as opposed to just still images of arty picture artwork, which I originally thought it was before. And what the previous two definitely were, with some minor exceptions in some parts of Real Time. But yeah, the animation is actually pretty good for this. But yeah, the animation pretty good. I mean, I'm still not a fan of just the still image version, unless I was listening to the audio version with a still image. Wouldn't mind that, but as this is supposed to be an animated project, then it's better to actually have some more movement in it. So actually does kind of succeed in that department. And it does differ from some parts of the original story a little bit, but to be honest, it does sort of work with the new version, and it does kind of get a little bit more of its identity. I do like how this version has come around due to a change in time, with the Fourth Doctor and Mana originally going to see Professor Kenotis. However, the events of the Five Doctors, like Genesis of the Daleks, like Genesis of the Daleks in a way, they take the Doctor and Mana out of time, and then at the end of the Five Doctors, they then go back to the TARDIS and then just carry on to the next adventure, the Leisure Hive. They actually directly mentioned Brighton. So in this universe, they've done a Genesis of the Daleks where the events of the Five Doctors erases the original Shada, Tom Baker's Shada, out of existence. What I meant by having it like Genesis of the Daleks is when, in that story, when they set back the Daleks about 1,000 years, not the creation there, but they're leaving Skaru, then they've kind of changed time with the previous Dalek appearances, supposedly. So it's a bit like that. In this case, however, the events of Shada happen, and then time is then changed by Barusa, and now the Eighth Doctor realizes, oh, we've got to go back and take part in these events again to investigate what was going on, what was happening, because we missed it last time and we just moved on. And so, yeah, by the end of the story, they pretty much come to the ending of the original. Although, that being said, at the very end, they kind of just stop where the original did stop, which would be good if it wasn't for the fact that you are wondering, shouldn't the Doctor take Romana and K9 back to Gallifrey now? Are they going to go somewhere else first? Are they going to do a real time and try and do a sequel to this story? So presumably the Doctor took Romana and K9 back to the end of back to Gallifrey at the very end, but it doesn't really show that. I also have to mention that they kept the bit with the Constable, and I really hate this bit. I think it's even worse here than in the Tom Baker version, because yeah, I don't know. It's just. It's Stuart Crossman, as I mentioned, does good with the character, but I just hate the Constable character in any version of Shada. It's the one scene in Shada, the penultimate scene, the last live action scene that they did film. Well, until they did the specially made final scene for the 2017 version, but the last original scene they filmed, and the penultimate scene of the story, it's just. Oh, if that character was not here, or if things had gone a bit different with that police command character, it wouldn't be so bad. But I hate the penultimate scene. If the policeman wasn't there, then it wouldn't be such a problem. It's not even funny. It's not funny. Okay, so to wrap up, the 2003 Shada has much better animation and artwork to its predecessor, Webcasts. However, I guess I'm just not a Flash Webcast fan, apart from Scream the Shulker, if that counts. But that one was animated by Cosgrove Horn. They had the characters moving, they had the images moving, and whilst we do get a bit of that here, it's not really in the same way. However, it's much better done, and the images are much cleaner and much more colourful than the previous two webcasts, so that's automatic. That's already a plus for this story. It's not a direct remake of the original, as there is quite a bit of variation, a bit of moving away from some bits, having some bits altered, but it does still feel pretty. But it still remains pretty strong to the original. And for 2003, this probably would be the definitive version until 14 years later, when we got the definitive version with the 2017 partly animated version. So on the whole, I'm going to give the Shada 2003 webcast, which you can find on here, perhaps, and on here. And if you've got the Flash player on the website and the audio version, slightly extended version here on the CD, I'm going to give Shada 2003, or Return to Shada as it's known on the Steelbook Blu-ray, a 7 out of 10. I think I could have given it an 8 for story, but the animation still knocks it down to 7. It was previously 6 due to the animation but it's gone up due to me liking it a bit more, especially after the previous 2 animations. And also the variations from the story means it's not a direct adaptation, and plus the acting and plus the performances, even Lana Ward, who's in all of the versions, don't put their all into don't put their all into the performances. Even by Big Finish standards, they don't put their all into their performances. So again, that stops it from being a 9. In fact, even an 8 in this case. So I think maybe audio version alone might be an 8, but with the visuals, it would be a 7. But that's still higher than the previous 2. So yeah. But not as good as the Tom Baker version. And if you want the definitive Shada, get the 2017 version. Get the 2017 version. You've got Tom Baker back as the Doctor. You've got better animation, and you get the full original story as written by Douglas Adams, or at least the one that they started shooting with, plus a final scene specially filmed with an older Tom Baker that pretty much wraps up the story beautifully. A beautiful end to a pretty cool story. But sadly, the webcast version doesn't quite match that. So if you want the definitive version, get or at least watch the 2017 version, or at least check out the linking material version that you can get on the original DVD and the VHS. And maybe if you just want the audio version, then pick up the CD perhaps. Might give that and real-time CDs listen in the future. No downloads are available, probably due to rights. They did mention this on the Shada page, rights issues, probably because of the webcasts. But as for the visuals, don't completely work here. Better than the previous 2, but still not really that well. And I think future animations, they are going to have to improve. Thankfully, the next and final Doctor Who BBC website Flash animation webcast would be a massive step up from what came before in both story quality. I mean, Shada was a great story, but it did differ from the original quite a bit, so it didn't quite match up to the original. Real Time and Death Comes to Time weren't really that great stories, especially Death Comes to Time. So we've got a step up from story and animation quality for the final webcast, Scream of the Shauker, the one and only story to feature Richard E. Grant as the Shauker Doctor. He's the second to feature Richard E. Grant as the Doctor, but he's playing a different one here, just Curse of the Fatal Death. So this one's next, and then after that, Doctor Who will return in Rose. Anyway, that's it from me. Stay tuned for Scream the Shauker, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel, which is a Big Finish audio set to, and it didn't work from the website. So yeah, you're pretty much stumped when it comes to the 2003 version when it comes on. So okay, Shada 2003. Okay, 2003 Shada. Before we get started, just want to mention that before we get started. Sorry. Oh, pretty much trying to basically doing a Shakespeare. I'm kind of actually a bit disappointed that K9, nor even in the 2017 version where she sounds even older. Although the character looks, the character designs, of course, he gets a brief cam. And in some bits they were more folk, and in some cases the vocals were more so it didn't quite work. However, with Shada's the animation actually, however with Shada it's animation, no, a bit like how Genesis of the Daleks erased the previous, well, slash I think it would have been. The story is also, and like I said, the alterations in the story prevent it from being a 9, like the original / 2017 versions. So Tom Baker, let's say, plus a special final sheet, plus especially. But so if you want the definitive version, get the 2017 version, or at least get the, or at least, but the webcast, and maybe the, and if you want the audio version, maybe the CD will do well, and maybe if you want the audio version with extended C, and if you want. Thankfully, the next and final Doctor Who BBC website. Thankfully, the next and final Doctor Who BBCi website. Real Time and Death Comes to Time weren't really that great stories either, and Death Comes to Time and Real Time really weren't that great stories. And then after that, Doctor Who will return.